Hey everybody, today's a big day. It's election day 2024, Trump versus Harris, and I have the right as a US citizen to go vote. Now, before I get any farther, I am not going to be talking about politics. I'm not going to be talking about who I'm voting for or anything like that. This video is strictly to show you my perspective and experience as someone who's visually impaired when it comes to voting. I believe that everyone has the right to vote for who they think will be the best leaders for our country, and so I'm not going to try to influence you on that. In fact, you probably have already voted when this video is going out. I feel like today is a pretty chaotic day. I've been trying to get work done and stuff, but my brain is just on this election, and so I think I have the perfect sweater on for this day, and my sweater says, "My brain has too many tabs open." Perfect sweater for this day. All right, so let's talk about our options when it comes to voting. You can put your vote in by mail, you can drop it off at the drop-off box, or you can go in person and vote. Now, drop-off box and the mail are very similar to me when it comes to accessibility. They give you a form, which I'll show you a video of it here while I'm talking about it. And on this form, you fill out specifically who you want to vote for. You fill in a little bubble, kind of like a test when you're in school. And then they use a machine to automate taking all the votes in so that it's quicker and they can get their results in faster. The typography on here is really straightforward. It's just black text on a white background. It has a nice neutral font that's easy to read. The font size is good. I can actually read everything on the form. Where it makes it challenging for me is the actual bubbles that you have to fill out, because I have to be able to fill in the lines and get it exactly perfect so that it actually can read it when it goes through the machine. And that makes me a little nervous because I've always had trouble with filling those in when I'm taking a test. In high school and college, I had an accommodation where I would take my test but not actually fill in the bubbles. I'd circle on a piece of paper so I didn't have to be accurate. And then someone else, an assistant or whoever, would fill in the bubbles for me of the answers that I had selected. Now, that is an option for me as someone who's visually impaired to sit down and have someone fill in my bubbles for me. I could have my roommate, my friend, or a family member do that. And I'm sure that I could find plenty of people who would be willing to help me out in that way. But part of voting is feeling like you have a secret private vote that you don't feel like you're being influenced by anyone else, and you are the only one who knows who you're voting for, unless obviously you choose to disclose that information. And I want to have that same equal right, and I also want to be able to be as independent as possible when it comes to me and my disability. And so those two options aren't great for me. And so going in person really is the best option. I know that for some people it can be a struggle because they don't live close to where there's a voting area, but I'm lucky to have one pretty dang close to where I live. I will say that I think in the future it would be fantastic if they could find a good way to avoid fraud and all that concern, and also have privacy and everything, and make it valid to be able to vote online. I have heard that that's a thing in some places, but it's definitely not something I can do in my current area. So I've been doing some research on what it would be like for me with a visual impairment to see if they had any accommodations when I go to the voting booth. And online it says that at least in the state of Utah where I live, they have large print options, they have an audio option if you ask for it, and I heard that in some places they also have Braille, which is not going to be the best one for me because I don't use Braille on a regular basis, but for some people that would be a great option. So for me, I'm either going to go for the audio and most likely probably the large print option. So let's go ahead and head out. I'll take you along. Okay, we made it. Let's go ahead and see what this is like. The parking was not fun, as expected. So I'm guessing it's kind of busy. Yeah, it looks busy.
Were you able to confirm it? Did you want to?
Yeah, it shows on the screen.
You're good on there? Okay.
Yeah.
Yep, go ahead and just drop that in there then.
Thank you. I did it, you guys. I voted. That was crazy. So apparently I picked the wrong place to come to vote. Apparently there's a place that's like 10 minutes away and it only has like a 10-minute wait, and here has like an hour and a half wait. I had already been waiting in line for a while before they told us that, so at that point it didn't really feel worth it. So I ended up just staying here. You guys, I want to tell you all about my experience. I was actually really happy with how it turned out and how accommodating they were. So I'm gonna get myself home and then I'm gonna tell you about it. All right, everyone, I got back from voting and I'm actually really pumped and excited right now. And honestly, I just had a really good experience and way better than I thought I would when it came to voting. I'm gonna be honest, I was nervous and was like dreading going to vote because I just don't like having to fill out the things, like the bubbles, you know, like I was explaining earlier. Usually what I'll do is I'll just suffer through it. I'll use my magnifier or I'll just do my best trying to see it on my own. And I just wasn't feeling it. Lately, I've been trying to advocate for myself and not just do things the way that regular people do things. The biggest thing was the place I went to had a line for registered voters and a line for not registered voters. I waited in the registered line for a long time because I'm registered to vote. And then after like 30 to 45 minutes, my roommate actually found me in the line because she had just finished voting. And so we were chatting a little bit and she was telling me about the setup of how the room was for where you vote. And she said that she just saw one place that looked like it was the accessibility voting booth. And so she was wondering if there might be a separate line or a different way to get to have access to it. And so I wouldn't have to wait in the normal line. And so she was very kind and went and asked for me. And in fact, you didn't have to wait in the normal line. I didn't know that. So if there was some way for them to make a sign that said, like, if you need the accessible machine, like, come let us know, or here's a line for it. There wasn't a line for anything. It was kind of just you go find someone who was working there and then they could bring you in and get you in the line for that machine. So I think that's my biggest critique and improvement that they could do for the next election, because I would have got kind of annoyed if I waited in that whole line and then I didn't have to. With that said, my roommate came and grabbed me after she found out that I could just go straight up and get in a separate line for the accessibility machine. And this lady was like, do you need help getting to the line? And I was like, no, just show me where to go. I can see enough and I can just follow you there. And she got me over to where I needed to sit. The people working there were super helpful. Like, I was really appreciative. They were super good at communicating and making sure that I had everything I needed. And they gave me space so I had my privacy and they weren't looking at my votes and everything, but they would come back and check in on me as I was voting just to make sure I didn't need help. And I really appreciated that because it really felt like I was able to do my own thing and have a way to do it like everyone else was, but it was just a different way, a different method than the typical normal way. I even asked if I could do some filming of the machine to show the environment and everything so that I can show you the accessibility machine. And they said it was totally fine as long as I didn't show people's faces or anyone's ballots. And so I was really grateful that they let me show you this. So it had this big clunky machine. It was like a computer screen basically. And then on the screen, it would do the voting. And you didn't have to fill out any bubbles or anything. You just touched the screen and you would select who you wanted to vote for on the screen. And the default of the screen was really small print. I couldn't read it for sure. It was probably, if I had to guess, like 12-point font. And it was just, you could see all of the votes all on one screen without scrolling or anything. And then the worker told me that there was a large print option and there was an audio option where I could put on these headphones, and then you had a keypad where you can click on the buttons to help navigate and select what you're listening to. And so I turned on the large print to see if I could read it, and then if I wasn't able to, then I would have done the audio option. But the large print was awesome for me. It just did one question on each page, and then you would click the next button and it would show the next vote that you were going for. And I thought that was super awesome because it was really easy for me to read, and I was really grateful that I took the time to go and get this accommodation instead of just like doing, you know, the normal. And then once I filled out all my votes, it let you review it all in large print to see what your votes were, to double check that you picked what you wanted and you could make any changes that you wanted. And then you click on there that you wanted to submit your vote, and you can't change it once you print it. So then the machine would print it for you and you would pull it out, and then you would just go put it in the ballot container that everyone else was using. And that's how you submitted your votes. I thought it was so cool that they had a large print option and audio, because that would work for people who are visually impaired and that works for people who are blind. They had a magnifier sitting next to it that you could use to look at your print sheet after it's printed if you wanted to double check that it printed right. I noticed that there was only one accessibility machine, and it wasn't a problem for me because I didn't have to wait super long in the line. Now, I could see that becoming a problem if there was a lot of people who needed it, but at least while I was there, it wasn't an issue. Overall, I was super happy with my experience, and it felt really liberating to be able to vote in a way that felt like it really worked for me and my needs. And I didn't feel othered or anything like that. The staff was super helpful and super nice, and they seemed like they really understood what it meant to help someone with a disability. And they were willing to read things for me. They were willing to do whatever it took. And they didn't just assume I needed help. They actually asked, like, do you need help with this or that? And I told them no on multiple things. And they're like, okay, great. Thanks for letting me know. Like, it wasn't a big deal. I hope you all were able to vote and find a way to do it that worked best for you. In the future, I do think it would be great if you could do it electronically, like I mentioned before I went, because that could really increase the amount of people who could actually be able to access voting and make it so much easier, because they're using their devices, the ones they're used to using, instead of having to learn a new machine. I know that at this point you can't use my experience of voting for this election, but keep in mind for the next election that there are ways for you to be accommodated with your disability. If you need large print and it's hard for you to read it at all or fill in the thing, don't be afraid to go ask them to use the accessibility machine. There's no shame. If you need help in any way to help you vote, go ask them for help and they will do their best to help you. These machines are there for anyone who needs to use them. The government provides these machines to help anyone who might need them, and you don't have to have a severe disability. If you just have a hard time reading, go and use their accessibility machines.